Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. For y'all that don't know me, my name's Webster. I'm a weed scientist at LSU. I've been down there 17 years, almost 18. Yeah, I got to think about it now. My clicker's not working, so Sunny Bottoms is going to be my slide advance. So you'll hear me go beep, and that's the next slide. We'll get into it real quick. I hadn't gone over this a whole lot, so it may take me just a few minutes to get going. So basically what I'm going to talk about is the cost effectiveness of conventional versus the Clearfield rice system. Let's talk real quick about the strengths of Clearfield rice. I'm going to kind of break this up in strengths and weaknesses, where we've been, where I see this system fitting, and how it works in our rice production in Louisiana as well as in the Mid-South. We'll talk about the strengths. Basically, I tell people all the time, this basically was our Roundup ready rice. The Clearfield system, when it came on, it made rice production easy. We knew that at least two of the products, once we got beyond, after 2002 was the first year of Clearfield rice, once we got beyond a couple of years later, we knew at least those were two of the herbicides we were going to use in our system. First of all, as a strength, the big thing with this product was it was a red rice herbicide. And everybody kind of understood it as a red rice herbicide. What else it brought to the table at that point in time, you know, in a sense, we didn't know the whole package and what it would do for us. And it also, you know, being basically a grass herbicide, it controlled both barnyard grass and broadleaf signal grass. It did have some weaknesses as well, if you will, Sonny, if you're the next one. Oops, flexibility. It was a flexible system. Weaknesses will be in my weaknesses. It is a flexible system in a sense that the nice thing about New Path, and we don't have a lot of herbicides that can do what New Path can, it can give you soil residual activity while at the same time giving post-emergence activity. So after having the system for a year or two, we finally realized we needed to be targeting that product, New Path, at that early post-emergence, very early. As soon as that stuff come out of the ground, that's when we wanted that first application to go out. We got post-emergence activity out of it, while at the same time we were getting our residual activity out of it. The really nice thing about it as well, there are very few rice herbicides that aren't compatible with New Path. When you think about it, probably Rice Star and Clincher are the two that I would probably stay away from a mixing standpoint, but everything else mixes very well with New Path. Got you some broad spectrum with it. You were allowed to put multiple modes of action in the tank, especially if you used a product like back in the good old days when we had Aerosolo, which I still say is probably the best herbicide we ever had in rice. And then when we got Rice Bow, we were propanil, thiobencarb, and imazethapyr all in one tank, 3 modes of action. Okay, again, multiple modes of action. It had activity on some of our perennial grasses that we have trouble with in South Louisiana. Maybe didn't totally take them out, but what it did for us, it gave us another tool in the toolbox, so to speak. Another good thing was it had sedge activity, grass and sedge activity. Really good on rice flat sedge, pretty decent on yellow nut sedge. Add a little bit of permit into the mix and you could go a long way with it. And what I really liked about it, it was a really nice aquatic herbicide for us from a pre-emergence standpoint. If I could get New Path out on the ground, on the soil application, I could do a pretty decent job on duck salad, hold it back, allow my rice to get a stand. Once I got a stand, I outcompeted my duck salad. If you've ever been in a field that had a really nice thick stand of rice, you don't have much duck salad in that rice. Alligator weed was pretty good as well. Again, it didn't control alligator weed, but when I took a product like Regiment or Grasp and mixed it with New Path, I kind of helped both products out, and I got a little bit better alligator weed activity. And the inbred lines as a whole, past the old 160, 141 and 121, have been extremely tolerant to this product. As you know, our hybrids tend to be a little bit sensitive to it at times. Even so, the odd thing about the hybrids, a lot of times when we get those hybrid injury calls, many times it's the second application of the New Path where we see that problem popping up. Now real quick about the weaknesses of Clearfield rice. We'll go into that. Again, broadleaf weeds, mainly legumes. The sesbanias, the joint vetches, Texas weed. Those are the kind of things that we had problems with from a broadleaf standpoint. Our sprangle tops were another one that was a big issue for us. For us in South Louisiana, Amazon Springletop being the biggie, we don't have a lot of bearded and Mexican, and for some of you guys that somebody may say, oh, that's Mexican or bearded, the taxonomists tell us now those are the same thing. So they are the same genus and species. They no longer divide those out. Neely's is one that we have quite a bit of in South Louisiana. Richard Costello is sitting here. He's called me about some that he's seeing up on the Arkansas, Louisiana border. That's a weed that's moving, also a problem in Texas. If you don't know what Neely's is, the first time you see it, you're going to think you're looking at vasi grass. That's what it's just a smaller, the spikelet on it is a little, the raceme with the seed are on is just actually quite a bit smaller than vasi grass, but from a distance you'll think that's just a messed up vasi grass. Big clump grass, very difficult to control. The rates were another, in a sense, were a little bit of a weakness. We kind of got used to that 4 ounce rate, and we got locked in on it mainly because of what the issues that we were having with the 121 and 141. Some of that early season injury, we started backing off to that 4 ounce rate. Really and truly, I tell the guys, when you put the first application of New Path out, put 6 ounces out there every time and don't look back. If you want to go to 4 ounces in the later application, that's fine, but be a little bit aggressive up front. We have some resistance issues. We don't, in Louisiana, compared to Arkansas and Mississippi, not to say that we don't have resistance, we just don't have the major issues with it that they're having in Arkansas. We've got areas of resistance around the state. You can pull that one out, Sonny. We don't have the major issues around the state. We have some isolated barnyard grass resistant to New Path. Is that one working, Steve?
There
yeah. Okay, thank you, Sonny. We do have some Echinocloa, some barnyard grass that's resistant to New Path, and we found that in the last couple of years. Some in Acadia Parish and some in St. Landry Parish. One thing that's kind of been some issues, not necessarily in Louisiana, Daryl Sanders, when that question would always come up, he said concrete wouldn't carry over in Louisiana. So we don't necessarily have a big issue with that. I have seen it at times. We did a carryover study in the last couple of years, and we'll see it early on that rice, generally conventional rice, has the ability to kind of overcome it with the issues that we've had. In Arkansas a couple of years ago, they had some pretty serious issues. A lot of time that's when that repeated use of Clearfield rice year in and year out, and I think you get a little bit, that doesn't break down totally, the New Path doesn't from a year to year. A weakness could say that it's not a standalone herbicide. It wasn't a true Roundup. We couldn't go out there with New Path and take everything out, but in a sense I think that's a strength, and I kind of went through that a while ago, is that it mixed well with just about all the herbicides we had. And I'm going to show you some data where when you mix that New Path with propanil or rice bow, that you can actually increase the activity on the red rice, so you get a little bit of synergistic effect. Now let's talk a little bit about what was done correctly with this technology over time. Again, we knew it was a red rice material. That's kind of how we used it. The first 2 years there, we kind of moved on pretty good. We were getting pretty good activity on our reds, but we were beginning to see those skips, either where the airplane or the ground rig missed. We had those lines running through the field. We weren't totally taking out all the red that was in the field. Those little corners in around the power lines, next to the roads where the power lines ran the road, it's just places where the plane or the ground rig couldn't get. We were having a little bit of trouble. Again, I keep coming back, it's not a standalone. But in a sense, that's what we did correctly. Again, we learned real quick that we needed to put other herbicides in the tank, and we adjusted for those weaknesses, and we started looking at products that really made New Path look good in the field while as well looking at some others. AIM was one that I always liked with this, that it kind of, AIM was not a very good standalone herbicide. It's kind of like Ford Baldwin always said about atrazine. Water was a pretty good herbicide if it had atrazine in it. And the same thing with AIM. AIM is a pretty good herbicide if it's got another product with it. Doesn't necessarily mean which herbicide mixed with AIM. Just put something with it. New Path and AIM were a really nice mix for us. Some folks did it correctly. Those that did it correctly had less of an issue. They had less of these carryover issues. They had less of some of the resistance issues that we're really beginning to see now. Some used these mixes to aid in control and some didn't. producers and consultants, they started asking for change when we started seeing these skips. So in about, I think it was 04, 05, we got beyond. And so that gave us that cleanup product. The product had less residual activity, so we could put it late and cause less problems in rotational crops. In Louisiana, you know, for us, we have roughly about 5% of our rice from time to time is rice following rice. We don't have a lot of it for various different issues, diseases and things like that, plus the crawfish industry in South Louisiana will rotate out of that sometimes. We've been real good, and Dr. Linscomb sitting up front here, we continuously release new varieties. These varieties have been new and improved every time we get a new variety online. The yields increase, so we've kind of stayed ahead of the game. We've always, we didn't just stop at 121, 141. We started 161, 151, 131, and just kind of built on those. In Louisiana, we rotated our chemistry, and I mean what I mean by that, again, getting back to that tank mix stuff, we were able to add more products in with it because most of our rice herbicides were compatible. We were able to use Command in it a lot as well, getting that extra residual activity out of it. What was done wrong with this technology? Basically, we knew again it was a red rice herbicide, but we didn't understand the spectrum. Sometimes we went out there thinking, okay, we're going to go with new path, that's all we're going to need, and then we realized, hey, we may need something else with it. Sometimes it took us a little bit too long. We got a little bit of a false sense of security with the product over time, and in a sense, we weren't prepared for those escapes at first. We thought that the red rice was so sensitive that even if we got a little bit on it, we'd at least be able to slow it down, and in some cases that wasn't necessarily true. Again, it wasn't a standalone product, and we did that wrong too because we felt like it was. Again, I'll go back to the rates that I talked about a few minutes ago. We didn't use that high enough rate. We settled in on, again, because of the injury. I really like that 6-ounce rate up front, and actually we started looking at that when we first started looking at the technology. That 6-ounce rate was where we were at the beginning when we first started evaluating it, and then because of the slowing down and the injury, we started backing off the rates just a little bit. This has always been an issue for us, is guys would wait till everything came up. And by delaying that application, I'm going to show you some data on that in just a few minutes. Anytime you delay that application, waiting on weeds to come up, that's where your yield reductions occur. It occurs real early season in a rice crop, first 3 or 4 weeks after emergence. In a lot of cases, that's where you lose your yield from a weed competition standpoint. And then you had those that say, hey, I had no choice but to leave the escapes. I didn't have time to get out there and get them, or they just chose to ignore them. Oh, it's just one plant. You know, that's one over there in the corner. I don't have to worry about that. And they let that fester, and over time, we got that problem. Or you get the yeah, but, oh, I can't do that. You know, and I get that a lot. Well, here's what you need. One time I had a guy call me and he gave me a list of weeds that are about as long as my arm, and I gave him my recommendation. He said, whoa, wait a minute, I'm out of money. You know, and there wasn't a one herbicide thing that could do that. And again, I can't do it. It's a hybrid. We get that a lot, especially in South Louisiana with some of our hybrids over time. Same with the 121 and 141. We had to be real careful with rates. And you'll get a guy, you'll tell them, they'll call you with a recommendation. They got red rice in the field. They got the spectrum that New Pass really good on. So getting a little bit big, I'll throw the 6 ounce and I'll go, whoa, wait, I got a hybrid. So, you know, those are the kind of things that we deal with. And in some cases, we ignored the rotation. We ignored that stewardship program. We just thought, well, we'll just not have to worry about rotating out of the Clearfield rice for a year and coming back with another crop. In South Louisiana, at times it's been an issue for us, especially in a warm winter, where we've left that rice in the field and then put crawfish in it, and for some reason that next year it didn't die over the winter. It comes back, and in a sense, we almost got another crop out of it. And again, the carryover potential with it is one of those things that we did wrong. We didn't recognize that in a lot of cases, and it didn't happen for several years, and then all of a sudden, you know, you started seeing this different winters and that kind of thing play an impact on breakdown. And in a sense, I tell people maybe I didn't do a good job. I didn't bring bring my knowledge to the table quick enough. I didn't make the right recommendations. We were a little bit delayed getting some of the word out there that we needed to. Now, really kind of get down to it and talk about the cost effectiveness of the conventional, of a conventional system versus a Clearfield system. Basically, what you'll do if you move to a conventional system, you lose some flexibility with that. And what I mean by that, and I read an article the other day that Bob Scott wrote in the Delta Farm Press. He said he wanted every herbicide in his toolbox. Well, when you don't plant Clearfield rice, you're losing 2 herbicides. You're automatically taking them out of your options, and then you throw them to the side, and then you got to start looking at conventional herbicides. When you take New Path out of the system, you lose that residual post-emergence herbicide that I talked about. And very few herbicides are like New Path, and very few can be mixed with nearly every herbicide that you have with little to no problem. In a lot of cases with a conventional system, if you're not careful, you wind up spending a lot more money because you keep coming back. You keep kind of having to hit that crop and come back with something else to clean it up. Not to say that doesn't happen with the Clearfield system, but in a conventional system, I find the questions are a little bit more lingering as the year goes on. This is where my herbicide programs, talking to growers this year, were anywhere from $25 to $100. I had a grower tell me one time this year that he had budgeted $25 for weed control. So, and I'm going to show you some data in just a bit when that's not necessarily a good idea. If you're trying to save money, cutting your herbicide costs is not the place to do it. That's an easy place to do it because that's probably, other than your seed cost, that's probably the place where you're spending the most money. You're getting into this area where there's a $100 treatment. You lose that defensive planting, and we all know how important that is from a drift standpoint. And there's a lot in Arkansas for sure that they don't necessarily have red rice in the field that they necessarily need to control with New Path, but that neighbor next door does. So I'm going to plant Clearfield rice just to defend myself from my neighbor. And drift happens, and in a lot of cases, it may not be your neighbor that did it. Sometimes when I go to a drift event, I have no idea where it came from. I just know that it's New Path on that field, and I can't pinpoint where it came from. Basically, Clearfield rice changed how we did things. It was commercialized in 2002. It basically changed the way we grow rice in South Louisiana especially. What did it change? It changed the herbicide programs. Something that we went to more residual type products. We weren't putting a lot of herbicides out in the water, so we could do more residual programs. It changed our insecticide programs. We began to manage the water weevil in a different way. And probably one of the biggest things that changed is our fertility program. We really got narrowed down by moving from a water-seeded system in Southwest Louisiana to a drill-seeded system. Basically, we were able to refine those fertility, those nitrogen rates, and do a lot better job of timing and application. And the big thing it did for us is it changed our planting method. And what I mean by that, when I first got to South Louisiana, we were probably, when I got to Baton Rouge in the state, 75–80% water-seeded rice in the state. Most of it was close to 100%, Steve, that'd be fair, in 97 was water-seeded in Southwest Louisiana. We were 35% water-seeded rice this past year in Louisiana, and that was actually up a tick, I believe, from previous years. So we went from a water-seeded system that had been practiced for several years and moved to a drill-seeded. Some of these growers in South Louisiana didn't even have a drill. And you're going to think I'm kind of crazy, it's environmentally friendly. We got away from at least some of our initial applications. We got away from those aerial applications and were able to go to a ground rig. We went from putting out massive amounts of Ordram, 15 pounds to the acre, to putting 4 ounces of this out. I tell people all the time, and some of these herbicides like permit, I put more sugar on a bowl of cereal when I was a kid than you put permit over an entire acre. So, it really, what we're doing now from an environmental standpoint, we're being pretty environmental friendly. And the biggest thing I think it did is it changed the way that Dad did it. And anytime you impact a production system to that level, that you change the way the family had done it for years, you've made a major impact. And to get those people in South Louisiana to move from what they were used to doing to this, that was a big deal. Let's talk about how it's changed production. If you look at this, what I did is I went back, and since we're mainly a long grain state, I went back and kind of tracked the acreage or the percent of the acreage that was grown in these long grains over time. And if you'll look here, I go back to 99 and 2000, our big varieties were cypress. And then we switched to cocodrie. And then you'll notice that as we go across here, not only did we change varieties of Clearfield rice, Steve his program was pretty good at getting us new conventional lines as well. So you go from cypress to cocodrie, and then in 2002, you see that little blip of 121 coming in there. Less than 5% of the acreage is 121. 161 in 2003 was starting to show up, but again, we're more of a conventional line with cocodrie, and then each year we start building up. See a little blip there in 2007 when we got away from 131 back to 161 for various issues that many of you know about, and then we picked up to 151. This is a big thing. I'm going to come back to this in a minute. That 2008 there, from there forward, that's where from 2009 on, that's where we made the switch. Majority of our long grain rice grown in Louisiana was Clearfield rice. Now, if you go back and let's look at yields and how they've changed over time in this from 1990, I'm going to go basically 13, 14 years before Clearfield rice, and then I've got it after we came in with Clearfield rice. If you look at from 90 to 1995, from the low in that 5-year time frame to the high rice yield average in the state, we had about an increase of 310 pounds. Now that high was actually in the earlier part of the decade there. Looking at the next 5 years from 95 to 2000, we had an increase of 550 pounds. So you start seeing that thing go up. Right here, 2000, 2002, that's when the Clearfield started coming in. We had an increase from low to high of 820 pounds. Then in the next 5 years, it was a 400-pound increase. And then look what happened in the last 5 years. We had a 1,200-pound increase in rice yield in that last 5 years in Louisiana. So we've done less than 5,000 pounds to over 7,000 pounds per acre. Pretty significant. And you'll notice right about here where that line really starts to jump up. Now, what was the 13-year prior to? We had an increase from the low to high of 970 pounds. The 13 years since we've had Clearfield rice, we had an increase of 1,910 pounds. We've doubled our average yield from 2002 to 2015. That's pretty significant over the previous 13 years. Now, I'm going to remind you here, go back to this slide. You see how the varieties picked up where we moved to Clearfield rice, superimpose that line on there. I don't think it's any coincidence that that line started going up right there. And what did it do for us? Number one, we were able to control a weed we never had been able to control with a herbicide. Red rice automatically got increased yields. We were controlling weeds that we probably had never controlled before with conventional herbicides like duck salad and things like that. So what it did for us, I believe, and anecdotal evidence tells me that it's helping us overall, just from a production standpoint, a yield standpoint. If you look at Arkansas and Louisiana from 2001, 2004, same trend line. This is Arkansas average yields, same numbers, same source that I used with Louisiana. That's the Louisiana yield. So you see the green dots in there, that's the average yield per year. The standard line drawn through there to, closest to a straight line. Same with Arkansas. The one thing you'll notice with Louisiana is how tight those dots are around that line compared to Arkansas jumping around. I want to show you the importance of the initial application of NewPath. Anybody get me a glass of water by any chance? I sure would appreciate it. Show you the profits of the herbicide cost of NewPath. That this is only taken into account herbicide costs. Okay, I don't have any application in there or anything like that. It's just the cost. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. And what I want to do is show you here on the left-hand side. That's NewPath at that very early post. As soon as it comes out of the ground, we're putting the herbicide on there. Then automatically, without question, 2 weeks later, we hit it with the second application. Then we delayed that first application for 1 week after emergence, hit it 2 weeks after that with the second application. All the way out by delaying the application to 4 weeks after emergence, and then 2 weeks later. So basically what I'm doing is I'm trying to control a larger weed. This is that I'll wait till everything comes up before I spray it. Instead of being aggressive right here, and you can see this is the dollar value, the drop in the amount of over the cost of the herbicide, what you lose. So by waiting a week, it's a $186 difference, okay? If you wait 4 weeks, that's $304 per acre that you lost by waiting the 4 weeks, waiting for everything to come up and do it all in one shot. So from a standpoint of application timing, this is important.
Eric.
Yes.
When did you flood all of those?
It would have been a delayed flood, Richard. We could have been out probably somewhere. It would have been roughly 4 to 5 leaf rice.
So you, that early followed by 2 weeks, did you have to make another application at
No,
3-4?
no, that's all it got.
Okay.
Yeah, just the NewPath program, that was it. The only thing it got.
You got a command in front of these too?
No, this is it. This is it in this. Talk a little bit more about flexibility of the product, looking at it with the propanil in the program. Show you this. This is NewPath by itself early, okay? And then when we waited a little bit longer and came back with this is propanil by, this is a NewPath program by itself. NewPath followed by NewPath. No propanil in the mix whatsoever. As you're looking at the slide, the red bar, the left-hand bar, if you're colorblind, which I've had several graduate students for some reason that are colorblind. If you're on the left-hand bar here, that's where the propanil went in with the first application of NewPath. 2 to 3 leaf rice. Just a little bit later, moving it out just a little bit in order for it to take the propanil. And what we did is I was getting a lot of questions, are there a difference in propanil formulations? So what we did is we looked at STAM, Rice Shot EC, STAM SC, the old, I think Dow had that product, Super Wham, the slurry formulation, and STAM EDF. And what you'll notice is anytime we were aggressive when we put that STAM up front, that propanil in the first application, our yields are much higher than if we waited to the second. But even by waiting to the second, we're still have increased yields over the NewPath program by itself, just adding the propanil in there. Now, let's look at cost, okay? This is NewPath by itself, and the number will fluctuate. I use $36.50 for 8 ounces of NewPath, okay? And then the $52, that's the cost of the propanil added to it. This is 3 quarts propanil, the equivalent of 3 quarts STAM. So, for example, this treatment here costs $52 versus $36. I'm saving what, 16 bucks? But if you look at the price, close to $730 versus $450. I got my money back. Even where I got a $93 treatment down there, I'm still making more money by putting that in there than I am keeping it out trying to save money on my production costs. Looking at residual programs, same thing. I've got no residual. I've got a NewPath followed by a NewPath. I've got a NewPath followed by Beyond. My second application was Beyond. Command up front pre, facet pre, grass pre, Prowl H2O. And I say pre, let's back up. I put these residual products with the first application. Okay, so I'm saving application cost. Okay, so you can see, here's my new path by itself, left-hand bar or red bar. I get higher yields regardless of what pre-emergence treatment I put in there. Look at the price. This is just the cost of the residual product. $14 for Command, $675 to $720. I make that money back and then some. Facet, $35 per acre. My increased net returns 121% over the new path by itself, 122% when I put it in with the Beyond. Grasp, 123% increase in net returns over herbicide cost versus 121% when I got it in with the Beyond. Same with the Prowl, $11 per acre, but I'm 114% over this number right here. Roughly $760 versus $670. So I'm getting that money back. I'm being more aggressive, I'm spending more money, but I'm making more in return. Look a little bit about synergism with New Path and Rice Bow. What we do when we do a synergism study, we put the products out by themselves. So what I've got is I got New Path at 4 ounces, I got Rice Bow at 1/4, and then what I did is I break out the 2 products that are in Rice Bow at the equivalent rate. So we got Rice Bow at 1/4, we got the equivalent rate of Stam, the equivalent rate of Bolero that's found in this quart of Rice Bow. Same when we go to 2 quarts of Rice Bow. Basically, you go in, you put the products by themselves. The reason I do this is if I see some synergism, can I say it's the propanil or the Bolero, or do I need both of them together to cause that synergism? So we put the products by themselves, we get an evaluation. This is basically my red rice control with the products by themselves, basically is 0. Then what we do is there's an equation that we use, it's called Colbys. We insert the data that we got from the control by the products by themselves and versus with the control with the new path, and we come up with an estimated value. This is what we should get. And that makes sense because all the red rice control you're getting is coming from the new path. So basically you're getting a 0 from the propanil formulations, the thiobencarb. You're getting a 0, you're getting no activity out of them. So you get basically the same bar going across here. Now, when we mix the products together, the red bar, this is what you see. We get increased control of red rice over new path by itself when we put 1/4 of Rice Bow or even 2 quarts of Rice Bow. So not only are we getting red rice control with the new path, we're getting enhanced control when we put the Rice Bow with it. We see the same thing with propanil by itself when you get up in those higher end rates of propanil. These are low rates that we're using here. We get in that 3-4 quart rate of propanil, we can see the same thing. Kind of give you, I don't know how well you can see this with the light on, but that's basically the non-treated. That's the 4 ounces of new path plus the Rice Bow at 4 pints. What we saw in 2015, because people were trying to cut money, we saw them cutting their herbicide rates to save money. They were delaying the application, trying to do that one application. I want to wait till one time. They may increase that new path rate, but they were waiting so they'd only have to hit it one time, save application cost. And basically reduced rates often cost more. Even, I spent a little bit of time in Arkansas before I went to Louisiana. I was there for 2 years. Ford Baldwin was still the extension weed scientist. All of you know Ford's reduced rate program. Well, that was set for people that watched their crop. If you used a reduced rate program, you were scouting that field every week. You were coming in there every week making evaluations. And in a lot of cases, those guys had a second application more than what a guy that was using full rates, because he was having to clean up some things, maybe coming back with a reduced rate, but he was being more aggressive with his applications, costing a little bit more money from an application cost, but he was saving, he thought, with reduced rates. And again, often these reduced rates, you get reduced control with the reduced rates. and need added application. And the worst thing you can do, especially in a reduced rate program, many times you get into that salvage situation. And you saw what the data I showed you about being aggressive and being upfront with your herbicide applications. You wait longer. You're getting that stuff out of the way from a yield standpoint, trying to help on yield efficiency, combine efficiency, but from a yield reduction, it's already happened. So you're just trying to, it's more of a cosmetic type thing. And again, you get yield loss due to the lack of control with these reduced rates. Again, we realized that we weren't eliminating the red rice with our repeated use in Clearfield rice over time. We still had some situations that even we've been in Clearfield rice, rotate and staying with the standard protocol that we have, the stewardship program, we still had not cleaned up a lot of these fields. And we began to see basically some new and old weed control problems. We got out there, we got away from the Clearfield, and we realized, oops, I'm gonna have to put something to control something that my new path was getting. Some of my grasses, I was having to be a little bit more aggressive on. That price in those conventional programs went up. What I think are some threats with the Clearfield rice price. And I think we saw that this year where we saw that acreage drop just a little bit. I'm seeing additives increasing a lot. A lot of people are coming in there and throwing, hey, let's throw some ammonium sulfate in there. Let's do this, let's do that. You know, be real careful when you start putting a lot of stuff in the tank. Know why you're putting it in there. Do you need an ammonium sulfate? Is it going to do what you want it to do? An ammonium sulfate is not a surfactant. It's not there to get that herbicide in the plant. It's a water conditioner. It's doing something that does, especially with glyphosate. It's manipulating the molecule, the glyphosate molecule, that makes it more water soluble and allows it to stay in solution so it can get into the plant. Basically, avoid technology to save money. Basically, that's what we were doing. We were getting away from the Clearfield rice, trying to save that dollar. There was a grower in Arkansas that I worked with a few years ago. He had been growing Clearfield rice. One of those situations repeatedly where he probably didn't need to be doing it, but he was getting in a bind financially. He moved away from Clearfield rice. His whole farm got drifted on. And that guy's no longer in business. He lost it that year, lost the whole place. Again, rice following rice, we get into this a lot of cases. It has caused some serious problems from us, whether it's hybrid dormancy issues, or we feel like we're getting into that, or it's outcrossing with some of our other Clearfield lines like 151 or 111. Basically, in my opinion, our resistance issues are what I call weedy rice, that may not be red, but may be these outcrosses, or maybe a dormant hybrid that's come back. And you remember, it's got the Clearfield gene in it. Some of those plants are going to be resistant to Clearfield. That makes it a weedy plant. So I don't hardly call anything red rice anymore. I just call everything weedy rice, because in a lot of cases I don't know what I'm dealing with. Again, I told you so mentality we still get into. I think that's still a threat, and we see that. You know, guys, I'll tell them not to do something, they'll do it anyway, and they'll come back, well, I told you it worked. Well, you know, that time it did, but not all the time will it. What are the opportunities that I see with Clearfield rice? Again, that broad spectrum control, having that tool in the toolbox, having something there that I can use in my crop, not wanting to get away from something, being able to use those multiple modes of action that help us on our resistance management as well. Again, water-seeded rice, we see a little bit of move even to water-seeded rice. With the Clearfield rice, it's a perfect system in a water-seeded system. If we get into a wet situation in the spring like we have in the past, we may have to shift. That Clearfield really has a nice fit in that as well. And I think you'll see that both Arkansas and Louisiana will continue to release new lines. They'll be high yielding, and they're getting in better quality as well. Again, the flexibility fits a lot of our production practices. And what we can do is we can shift whatever we're hit with, whether we decide we need to water seed, I can put Clearfield rice into that. Again, if it gets wet, we can water seed it. We can drill seed it if the conditions are good. We can reduce tillage with the product. It does have some burn down opportunities with it as well, especially at planting, along with some other herbicides with it. You know, we've seen our ratoon crops. Steve can speak more to this than I can, but our ratoon crops this year have been out of this world. In some cases, we're getting ratoon crop yields where the yields were when I first got to Louisiana on total crop. I mean, we had some really good yields around the state. And again, the flexibility in the herbicide program. If you ever heard me talk before, I keep repeating points that I want to keep bringing back. I say them over and over again. Change subject on you a little bit. The Previsia rice is going to help us. It's going to help us save the Clearfield technology, while at the same time we'll save the Previsia technology by having the Clearfield. It'll fit in our rotation schemes. We'll have two technologies, which we've always wanted to have. One last thing. Everyone needs something in their life that requires a helmet. I'm getting a little bit old, but I think it's a good thing if you got something you can get away from mama on. She's yet to get on it with me, so that's not a bad thing. Anybody got any questions?
Nice nose.